were intended to enforce the absolute legal equality of the two races, but they were not intended to abolish distinctions based on color, nor were they intended to enforce social equality or to allow the two races to commingle. Segregation remained law in the United States until the Plessy was overturned by Brown versus the Board of Education in 1955. Despite the court decision, a fierce segregationist backlash kept the old laws and customs in place long after the Brown decision. By 1963, King had been developing the philosophy of nonviolence for more than a decade, but the letter from a Birmingham jail was the most eloquent and widely published statement about nonviolence. Hundreds were arrested during the Birmingham campaign, with the Alabama jails filled to overflowing and the campaign of massive civil disobedience, sharing the ugly face of segregation with America and the world. Religious leaders wrote an open letter to criticize the movement for civil rights. In their letter to Martin Luther King, the religious leaders in the Birmingham community were counseling African Americans to postpone their demands for full citizenship, demands that had already been denied for generations. King answered their letter with a determined yet gracious argument about why black citizens of Birmingham would no longer be denied their God-given rights as human beings. Letter from a Birmingham jail is a tribute to the sacrifices of the generation that ended legal segregation in the United States. We honor this great achievement, even as we realize that the work of spreading peace and justice in the United States and around the world is far from over. We read the letter from a Birmingham jail to honor Dr. Martin Luther King, to remember the courage of those involved in the civil rights movement, and to reflect on the fight for justice in our time.
While confined here in the Birmingham City Jail, I came across your recent statement calling our present activities unwise and untimely. Seldom, if ever, do I pause to answer criticism of my work and ideas. But since I feel that you are men of genuine goodwill and your criticisms are sincerely set forth, I would like to answer your statement in what I hope will be patient and reasonable terms. I am in Birmingham because injustice is here. I am cognizant of the interrelatedness of all communities and states. I cannot sit idly by in Atlanta and not be concerned about what happens in Birmingham. Injustice anywhere.
Injustice anywhere. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere.
We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. Never again can we afford to live with the narrow, provincial, outside agitator idea.
Anyone who lives inside the United States can never be considered an outsider.
We have waited for more than 340 years for our God-given and constitutional rights. The nations of Asia and Africa are moving with jet-like speed toward the goal of political independence, and we still creep at horse and buggy pace toward the gaining of a cup of coffee at a lunch counter. I guess it is easy for those who have never felt the stinging darts of segregation to say, wait. But when you have seen vicious mobs lynch your mothers and fathers at will,
and drown your sisters and brothers at whim,
when you have seen hate-filled policemen curse,
Kick, brutalize, and even kill your black brothers and sisters with impunity.
When you see the vast majority of your 20 million Negro brothers smothering in an airtight cage of poverty in the midst of an affluent society.
When you suddenly find your tongue twisted and your speech stammering as you seek to explain to your 6-year-old daughter why she cannot go to the public amusement park that has just been advertised on television, and see the tears welling up in her little eyes when she is told that Funtown is closed to colored children, and see the depressing clouds of inferiority begin to form in her little mental sky, and see her begin to distort her personality by unconsciously developing a bitterness toward white people.
When you have to concoct an answer for a 5-year-old asking in agonizing pathos, Daddy, why do white people treat colored people so so mean?
When you take a cross-country drive and find it necessary to sleep night after night in the uncomfortable corners of your automobile because no motel will accept you.
When you are humiliated day in and day out by nagging signs reading white and colored, when your first name becomes nigger and your middle name becomes boy, however old you are, and your last name becomes John, and when your wife and mother are never given the respected title Mrs.
When you are harried by day and haunted by night by the fact that you are a Negro, living constantly at tiptoe stance, never quite knowing what to expect next, and plagued with inner fears and outer resentments.
When you are forever fighting a degenerating sense of nobodyness.
Nobodyness.
Then you will understand why we find it difficult to wait. There comes a time when the cup of endurance runs over and men are no longer willing to be plunged into an abyss of injustice, where they experience the bleakness of corroding despair. I hope, sirs, you can understand our legitimate and unavoidable impatience.
You express a great deal of anxiety over our willingness to break laws. This is certainly a legitimate concern. Since we so diligently urge people to obey the Supreme Court's decision of 1954 outlining segregation in public schools, it is rather strange and paradoxical to find us consciously breaking laws. One may well ask, how can you advocate breaking some laws and obeying others? The answer is found in the fact that there are two types of laws. There are just laws and there are unjust laws. I would agree with St. Augustine that an unjust law is no law at all.
An unjust law is no law at all.
Now, what is the difference between the two? How does one determine when a law is just or unjust? A just law is a man-made code that squares with the moral law or the law of God.
An unjust law is a code that is out of harmony with the moral law. To put it in the terms of St. Thomas Aquinas, an unjust law is a human law that is not rooted in eternal and natural law.
Any law that uplifts human personality is just. Any law that degrades human personality is unjust. All segregation statutes are unjust because segregation distorts the soul and damages the personality.
There are some instances when a law is just on its face and unjust in its application. For instance, I was arrested Friday on a charge of parading without a permit. Now, there is nothing wrong with an ordinance which requires a permit for a parade. But when the ordinance is used to preserve segregation and to deny citizens the First Amendment privilege of peaceful assembly and peaceful protest, then it becomes unjust.
Of course, there is nothing new about this kind of civil disobedience. It was seen sublimely in the refusal of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego to obey the laws of Nebuchadnezzar because a higher moral law was involved. It was practiced superbly by the early Christians who were willing to face hungry lions and the excruciating pain of chopping blocks before submitting to certain unjust laws of the Roman Empire. To a degree, academic freedom is a reality today because Socrates practiced civil disobedience.
We can never forget that everything Hitler did in Germany was legal, and everything the Hungarian freedom fighters did in Hungary was illegal. It was illegal to aid and comfort a Jew in Hitler's Germany. But I am sure that if I had lived in Germany during that time, I would have aided and comforted my Jewish brothers even though it was illegal. If I lived in a communist country today where certain
reach the goal of freedom in Birmingham and all over the nation.
Because the goal of America is freedom.
Abused and scorned though we may be, our destiny is tied up with the destiny of America. Before the Pilgrims landed at Plymouth,
We were here.
Before the pen of Jefferson scratched across the pages of history the majestic words of the Declaration of Independence.
We were here.
If the inexpressible cruelties of slavery could not stop us, the opposition we now face will surely fail. We will win our freedom because the sacred heritage of our nation and the eternal will of God are embodied in our echoing demands.
Never before have I written a letter this long, or should I say a book. I'm afraid that it is much too long to take your precious time. I can assure you that it would have been much shorter if I had been writing from a comfortable desk. But what else is there to do when you're alone for days in the dull monotony of a narrow jail cell, other than write long letters, think strange thoughts, and pray long prayers?
Think strange thoughts and pray long prayers.
Write long letters, think strange thoughts, and pray long prayers.
If I have said anything in this letter that is an understatement of the truth and is indicative of an unreasonable impatience, I beg you to forgive me. If I have said anything in this letter that is an overstatement of the truth and is indicative of my having a patience that makes me patient with anything less than brotherhood, I beg God to forgive me.
Forgive me.
Forgive me.
Yours for the cause of peace and brotherhood,
Martin Luther King, Jr.